Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Pierre Tran, who, as a British national, came to Paris as a Reuters correspondent a while ago and stayed on. Pierre, great to see you. Thank you very much for sparing me
Hello.
some time. Today we're going to have a look at the history of Reuters, the news agency, and we're going to talk about your current activities and in the field of journalism. First of all, how did you get into journalism?
That's a funny, yeah. So just to do the backstory, my father was a journalist, radio journalist, BBC External Service, broadcasting in Vietnamese out to Vietnam. My big brother was in journalism, writing as a correspondent, super stringer, as we call it, from America to The Guardian. And I blundered from job to job after graduating until finally I got into a trade paper or a trade magazine as a journalist. But first, I was all over the place, but I finally ended up in journalism.
And then, of course, you went on to Reuters.
Yes.
How did you get that job?
You know, I was a staff writer, as we called it, a reporter for a weekly magazine in the Haymarket group. And I kind of fell out with a new incoming editor. And she kind of nice enough, but she didn't see me, you know, kind of in the editorial team. And she took all the staff out to lunch one by one, and she said, "Are you in the right job?" And I took it. I thought, oh, interesting question. And I took it literally as such. And I told her, look, I've been through political lobbying, rubbish. I was in industrial market research, and what else? Yes, you know, bits of things here and there. But the thing I've got into, journalism, is the best job ever. I really like it. I've done other things.
Yeah.
It's the best. And she said, you know, me too. It's the best. I've been a secretary and so on. And then having sort of gone through that, I saw a job ad for Reuters, and I applied and I got it after 13 months as a reporter on this magazine. And I went to see that editor who tried to see me out, and I told her, just, you know, pre-warning, I'm off, I'm going to Reuters. And she kind of looked at me and said, really? Fleet Street? I said, yep, Fleet Street, 13 months. And she asked me, you know, oh, and so how much will you get? How much will you earn? You know, what's your salary? I told her. She looked at me and said, that's more than many editors in this lot. I said, and I just said to her, it's Fleet Street.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Premium payment for Fleet Street journalists. Simple as that. Let's take a look at Reuters if we can, because it's a large organization. It's currently got 2,500 journalists and 600 photojournalists. So it's a pretty powerful organization, isn't it?
Absolutely. And vital. I mean, really, really important. I mean, you know, Ukraine, but but everywhere, at a time of, you know, fake news, false information, lies, you know, I just say lies, propaganda, that kind of Reuters reporting, really important.
And it's unbiased.
It's unbiased. That's important. You know, news agency style. Here's the thing. When I joined, you know, I'd been at, you know, various journalist outfits before, but the culture of Reuters as a news agency, the values were, the key values were accuracy, reliability, and the last quality was speed. Accuracy, reliability, and speed. Beat the competition, but don't beat them at the cost of, letting yourself down.
Yeah, yeah. Looking at the history, it's 170 odd years old. Paul Reuters setting it up as a news agency in Aachen in Germany in 1850. And this is what I found particularly interesting. He used homing pigeons and the new telegraph between Aachen and Brussels to actually put the news stories through.
That's right. It was the pigeons
Yes.
that carried the market-sensitive information of the market prices. It's a financial agency.
Yeah.
With a bit of general news tacked on.
Yeah. So we didn't have a 15-minute delay. We just had the flight of the pigeon to make sure it was all okay and everything else. He then moved the business in 1851 to London, and it was operating from the Royal Exchange. What was the reason for London? Was it, better communications?
I think it's to do with better communications, but it's the financial hub.
Yeah.
That is the city, the financial district, the city. And it's about, getting the information first for people to trade on, actually, share trading, bond trading, currency trading. But it's a financial district. It's the city.
So that was the attraction. And of course, we sort of take a lot of things for granted these days, but the telegraph system, which was just cables, presumably, and Morse code in those days, was a fairly new innovation then, but presumably a lot of cables were going into London. So, he could radiate his news out from London comparatively easily.
Right.
Yeah. 1872 establishes contacts in the Far East, and 1874 South America. So he's going all over the world in a very short space of time.
Right.
Interesting guy.
It's kind of trading.
Yeah, very much so. And he died in 1878. Very tragic, this. I noticed his son Herbert took it over and he committed suicide, which, obviously made a difference. Company then went private, apparently. I also wasn't aware of the fact that they were using radio as early as 1923.
I suppose it's all about getting the news in first, fast as you can.
Yeah. So there we are. Is the Press Association a rival company? Because I noticed that they have held a stake in it.
Well, that's the funny thing. Press Association, PA, is not really competitor. It's because, I'll tell you why, because PA is the domestic news agency.
Right.
And Reuters is an international news agency. So if you ask what's the competition, it used to be rival agencies like Associated Press, AP, Agence France Presse, AFP, and then along came Bloomberg. But yeah, those are in a sense, all news outlets are competitors because you're really going for the scoop. You're going for the exclusive.
Yeah, and it was interesting, apparently, that in 1945, they were the first news agency to report Himmler's attempted negotiations to end World War II. So that was a scoop, wasn't it?
Good. It's all about scoops. and getting it right,
Yeah. I mean, you sort of go down the list and they announced the Berlin Wall. I guess in 1973, it was quite interesting. Computer terminals come into use. That must have been quite a turning point.
Yeah, that's in some ways, well, there are a couple of sort of turning points, if you like. Of course, the pigeon. Then you've got, or Morse, all the means of transmissions possible. And then along came the computer. And that sort of really changed Reuters, because then they came up with the Reuters terminal, the news terminal. And that made a fortune for Reuters.
And
And sorry, just on the
yeah,
the shareholdings. The other shareholders were other news organisations.
right,
So among the shareholders was Rupert Murdoch, for instance. He'd
right.
come along to 85 Fleet Street, head office of Reuters, but you get all the press barons.
So they were all using the company, and presumably the company charged a fee each time,
That's
did
right.
they? How did that work out?
That's the commercial side, marketing and sales. Sorry, I'm on the reporter, but
I was
yeah,
going to,
there are
your bit of the
rates.
commercial side presumably was the monthly salary check.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. One of the things, it was private, as you said, rightly say, and then it was making so much money. Actually, the shareholders, the press barons, Fleet Street said, "Let's take it to the market. Let's float it
Yeah.
on the stock exchange." It floated. It became, a different sort of company, because then you're watching the share price.
Very much so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They had to go at a TV channel, I believe.
Well, it was a shareholder or partner with Viz News. It's news reporting by video.
Yeah,
You're filming, you're reporting on video out in the fields, and the subscribers or the clients use that, and they've got their studios and so on. But no, there's been Reuters television as an activity for quite some time. My former senior correspondent, great reporter, she was head of the capital markets reporting desk, but then she went on to the television part,
yeah.
and she was such a super duper TV reporter for Reuters television.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, I suppose Bloomberg must have, pushed a lot of these things out the way, didn't that?
Bloomberg, changed the game,
Yeah.
because before you've got the traditional rivals, competitors, the news agencies. Bloomberg, he was formerly a trader at Salomon Brothers, got laid off, had a large amount of money, and he came up with the Bloomberg. It's a computer terminal which gives the background information, all the historic trading data on bonds, trading in bonds.
Yeah.
And you subscribe to that, and as a free option supplied to you as a subscriber to the bond trading terminal, you can have a news terminal.
Right.
It's a freebie.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, actually Reuters has its own trading terminals as well. And there you've got, trading in the financial markets. You subscribe to that, and you also subscribe to the news channel as well, the Reuters News. So it's a different business model, and Bloomberg changed the game.
And of course, anyone can see Bloomberg if they've got satellite television these days, can't they?
They're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you're an accomplished journalist. I'm getting a bit past these things,
Not
but
sure
I have to say, when you're looking at the Bloomberg screen on the television, all of these prices whizzing around, it does take a little while to actually focus in on it. I'm sure it doesn't with you.
It's all about prices.
Absolutely.
It used to be the ticker tape.
Yes. Well, I suppose it is electronic ticker tape, isn't it? Basically. Now, when did you leave Reuters?
I left 1999.
Right.
For a fair while.
And then went freelance.
I went to the opposition, to the competition, AFP, Place de la Bourse, Agence France Presse, the English desk, the economics English desk, and it was my way of staying on in Paris.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what about today, Pierre? Because I know you've written some articles that you've sent me. It's mainly still got a financial aspect, your work, hasn't it?
Rather, I mean, now I'm a financial reporter, thanks to Reuters, really.
Yeah.
My topics change. But yeah, so my specialist beat, the sector that I seek to cover is French defense policy and French arms industry.
Mm.
But my kind of angle is the financials. It's
Yeah.
a business story, to my mind.
Yes.
What does this mean for business, and what do people have a right to know?
So as far as the French armed forces are concerned, the defence side, you would want to find out a little bit more about who was building equipment for them, and where it all came from and everything else. And I was sort of following up on this question of the aircraft carriers, the two
Yeah.
British ones plus the French one. And it seems to me that at the present time, the only carrier powers in Europe are those two. Is that correct?
Well, there's the Italians actually as well. The
Yeah.
Cavour, they've got a carrier, but yeah, the big players are Britain with the two, Queen Elizabeth and Prince of
Yeah.
Wales, very large carriers, and then the Charles de Gaulle, which is a nuclear-powered carrier. So it's a status symbol.
Yeah. Is it effective?
Good question. Depends. Depends what you mean. Effective. No, here's the point. There's
Well,
some. Yeah.
Continue.
No, yeah. Well, there is one point of view which says the Charles de Gaulle is a diplomatic symbol. It's a 45,000 ton visiting card from
Yes.
France.
Yeah.
If there's there's some sort of crisis going on or some kind of thing happening, they send over the Charles de Gaulle and they say, don't forget us, we're here, and we have, what they call force projection. They can send their fighter jets off with the missiles and bombs, what have you. And their spy planes, like they have sent that over to Eastern Mediterranean, away from their previous mission, to fly Rafales out to Eastern Europe, not over the Ukrainian airspace,
No.
but the NATO countries neighboring Ukraine, just to say we are here as part of the NATO force.
Yeah.
But also they've got their spy planes, these Hawkeye spy planes, flying along the border, and they're tracking everything. Well, trying to track, stuff that's happening over there, and feeding that back into the NATO network.
What are your views on a European army? Because looking at it from a simplistic point of view, surely NATO is almost doing that in any case, isn't it?
Sort of, yes. Yeah, NATO's there. NATO's beefed up, certainly in Eastern Central Europe. They've sent tens of thousands of troops and kit, fighters, you name it, into NATO partners around Ukraine. But here's the thing. So France reckons that NATO has one big partner. It's called America, White House, and they decide. So the thinking at the moment with the President Macron, Emmanuel Macron, who holds the 6-month presidency of the council, is there should be a European approach for military sovereignty. So EU should get its act together. So he's put out this document, the Strategic Compass, rewrote it, redrafted it in the light of Ukraine, saying, Europe is important, NATO is important, but Europe needs to have its own capability. So, and just to say, one of the ideas that's been floated in this document, this Strategic Compass, is there be a 5,000 battle group of European, nations. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah,
I mean, I think let's face it, they can't. The West needs America. It's as simple as that. And to sort of think that you could, if you like, run a NATO type organization without America, I think is really wishful thinking, particularly given the pathetic contributions that some of the European countries have been making over the last few years towards it. It's
Ukraine's
difficult, isn't it?
changed that.
Yeah.
No, it's tricky. Yeah, a couple of factors there. I have no opinion as a reporter. No, just a couple of factors here. Ukraine's changed things. So you got, Germany, pacifist Germany, used to put in something like 1.2, 1.3% of gross domestic product into military spending, which was under the 2% which NATO had, asked all its partner nations to spend. So they're putting in 100 billion, as of now. So there's a, and the other NATO countries have all said they will increase defense spending, to 2% at least. Though having said that, I just saw that the latest budget figures from France, they're doing a slight, they call it a temporary, but they have cut something like 400 million euros from their defense budget in the upcoming budget. And the French Ministry of Defense has stepped in to say it's just a temporary thing. We'll plug that gap a little bit later. I think September. But so here's one other thing. Another observation: NATO, depending on the US. The lesson learned, quote marks around lesson learned, was Kabul, Afghanistan. Could you depend on America to help things along with the evacuation out of Kabul?
Yeah, disaster, wasn't it?
Total disaster. So lesson learned there was, hey, maybe Monsieur Macron might have something, right about strengthening the European side. We'll see. Also, and then and then along comes Ukraine, so to speak, and Mr. Biden has gone out of his way to coordinate, communicate, cooperate with the NATO allies, calling.
And make some pretty crass statements as well.
He has his thing.
Yeah, I'll just tell our viewers when we recorded this was the day after Biden had actually said that he wanted to take Putin out, basically, didn't he?
Needs a change of government.
Change of regime. and then denied it.
Well, no, then his advisors and the state secretary says they don't mean anything serious by that. They're not going to take him out. Just, it's up to the Russians.
Yeah. How do you see the Ukraine situation panning out?
Awful. Well, there's this idea that, the today's story is that the president of Ukraine has said that a partition or a neutral country that's basically split, and he'll accept that in the peace talks. We'll see. The peace talks are rolling on as of today, but in the meantime, you've got a war of attrition. You've got these towns, cities, civilian populations smashed to pulp.
I've been very impressed, though, with the way the Ukrainians have tried to defend themselves, because I can't help feeling Putin thought that he'd be able to just sort of roll the tanks over the border and everyone would put their hands up and sign a surrender agreement. And that hasn't happened.
And throw flowers out. Welcome, these liberators.
Yes. I mean, it seems to me, bearing in mind your military connections, it seems to me that they just didn't take into account things like the winter, which of course Napoleon and Hitler failed on, didn't they? And other things logistically, it seems to be an absolute shambles.
Yeah. No, it's been kind of a lesson, but I suppose it surprised the West. It surprised the Russian commanders. I mean, there's this story that the defense secretary couldn't be seen for 2 weeks, and then turns out he's had a heart attack.
Right.
I mean, 2 weeks. Well, yes.
Well, you just, in terms of the information coming out of Russia, I just think you've got to take everything with a shovelful of salt, not a pinch of salt. And, obviously there have been lots of Russian lives lost in this particular.
I mean, conscripts who didn't know what was going on, had been misled, lied to.
Yeah.
They thought they were on a training exercise. Next thing they're at war, in combat, and they've been killed, thousands and thousands.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how many have been killed? I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it, if you're getting bad information from Moscow?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, even
but you think thousands?
Thousands. I mean, I've seen a range of say 7 to 15,000. So you're talking double.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it's a shocking number of lives lost, isn't it? And of course, looking from the Ukrainian point of view, equally the casualty figures there have been bad.
Casualties and refugees, a quarter of the population, 44 million population. They're displaced, on the run.
Where do you think, assuming Putin, gets his own way up to a point, where does that leave Poland, Hungary, Slovakia rather? Where does it leave them? Because they're rattling right up to the border, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, the latest thinking is now that there be strengthened NATO permanent bases in those countries. Before, you had a rotating, you had a series of military exercises, just to show that, cuckoo, we're here, don't forget us. And actually, since 2014, when they took, the Russians took over the Donbas region in the east, there were NATO exercises, strengthened presence. They called it enhanced this, enhanced that. These are, NATO terms. The air police patrols, the NATO countries rotated their fighters over there to say that they're protecting the Baltic nations, the Baltic states, from any kind of threat. So instead of just rotating patrols and exercises, maybe a strengthened base, permanent base.
And you think that will help in terms of a deterrent?
Well, yes, we'll wait and see. But yes, that's the idea. Particularly Poland. Poland is, it's a player, so to speak. It's a regional player. I mean, they're all important nations, of course, but Poland has a geopolitical significance and a hardliner, so to speak, because they're at risk.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Well, sorry. The other country, Moldavia, is next to Poland, and it's not NATO, and it's particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, but they have actually taken refugees, haven't they? I think Moldavia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They've welcomed a lot of refugees. A relatively not a well-off country,
no,
not a rich country, and yet they've received many refugees.
What's your view as far as Sweden is concerned? Because it's still neutral. I think I saw that they were sort of thinking about a few spy planes and things like that.
Well, good question. No, really, one of the best press trips ever was the Swedish press trip. I refer to that as the gold standard for press trips.
Right.
There was a particular company, Swedish company, and they built a lot of Swedish kit, in the air, a fighter plane, at sea, electronics, some space. Anyway, so yeah, one of the things they showed the foreign press for the first time, we went into the submarine pen in the harbour of Stockholm. So we're talking submarine pens under deep cover, really protected, and they show us for the first time, foreign press on the ground in this kind of hangar, all this kit laid out. And what they're showing are the bits of a spy plane, a Swedish spy plane, DC-3, that was flying in the 50s, flying in international airspace, looking over into Russia. And then they sent the MiGs up to catch it. It fled. It was flying out over sea, away, unarmed. They shot it down and it crashed. And you can see in the bits of fuselage, they pieced it together, or they laid it out. And you can see the bullet holes, the machine gun bullet holes, or the cannon holes, saying it was flying away and he downed it. And in the wake of that, Sweden decided, we will kit up, we will get a lot of equipment, arms, in defense, but staying out of NATO, neutral, non-aligned. Now, in the wake of Ukraine, they're thinking, maybe apply for membership of NATO. Yeah,
well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because they've been neutral for years and years and years and years and years. Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
and also increasing. So just to say, they're increasing their defense budget as a response to what's happening.
What other stories are you on at the moment that are of significance?
Well,
pre-publication.
No, there's so many stories. There's a ton of material. But here, I'll just throw out one recent story I did, just because it's a Ukraine thing, so to speak. Ukraine threw out video clips, Russian television video clips, which were picked up by the UK press about 2 weeks ago. Hypersonic missile. So you've got a test launch of a Russian Navy hypersonic missile from a Russian frigate. Now that took place around about December last year. It's a test launch, but they got it on Russian television. They re-release it, and the UK press run it because it's Ukraine. So that's during the week. Over the weekend, you've got a Russian fighter jet launching an air-launched hypersonic missile. So here's the thing: hypersonic, faster, more powerful than a supersonic missile.
Yeah. Okay.
So Mach 4, Mach 5 plus, and the Russians claim they can do a hypersonic Mach 9 or 10. Who knows? So we're kind of seeing an arms race going on. Yeah. The Chinese have got hypersonic missiles. They go high up into the atmosphere. They glide. They come down so fast you don't spot them, and they hit the target. The Americans don't have it. The Europeans don't have it. So
that's a worry, isn't it?
Could be a worry.
Yeah. And particularly if you haven't got the equipment to spot the thing.
They're so fast you don't spot it. By the time you spot it, it's too late. Yeah. That's the idea. Yeah. So for the Russians, they're very pleased to have it. Oh, sorry, just to chip in. So the British and the French have got a missile cooperation agreement signed. They're working together and looking at next generation missiles over the next 18 months and deciding what kind of missile they would work together on. So we'll see.
So there could be something to fire back, as it were.
That's right.
Because that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
Putin himself has said in a speech that he's very proud of having hypersonic, and he's saying by the time the West catch up with hypersonic missiles, Russia will be doing the counterstrike. They'll be doing the anti-hypersonic missile by the time the West catches up. Yeah.
Scary days, Pierre. Scary days. It's been an absolute privilege to talk to you. I've really enjoyed our chat this morning, and wish you well.
Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Well, we'll try, and hope to have a further chat at some later stage. It's been good. Thanks, Pierre.
Okay, see you.